The rain came down in icy sheets as Bianca Smith guided her rusted pickup up the serpentine road, windshield wipers squealing with each frantic pass. The mountain air smelled of wet pine and forgotten years. She'd left behind everything familiar. Her job, her city apartment, her ex-fiancé who had called her too restless for real life. Maybe he was right. But restlessness was better than regret. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 31, Bianca had reached a strange crossroads. Her career as a freelance photographer had fizzled. Her savings were gone. The only thing she had left was her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. When the world gets too loud, child, go where the mountains speak softly. So when she saw the online listing, ruined cabin in Echo Ridge, tens must be moved or restored, it felt like fate. It was more a challenge than an investment. The photos showed a collapsed porch, a moss-covered roof, and windows like dark eyes staring out of time. But something about it called to her. Now, as she turned the final bend, Bianca's headlights caught the cabin's crooked silhouette through the fog. It looked even worse in person, half swallowed by weeds, one wall caved-in, door hanging off its hinges. She parked and killed the engine. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the dripping of rain from the eaves and the distant rush of the creek. "Home, sweet home," she muttered, pulling her jacket tight. The chill cut straight through the fabric as she pushed open the door. It gave a long, eerie groan, the sound of old wood protesting years of neglect. Inside, her flashlight beams sliced through the gloom. Dust swirled in the light like pale ghosts. The floorboards creaked as she stepped forward. There were broken chairs, a toppled stove, and the remnants of someone's long-abandoned life. A rusted lantern, a tattered Bible, a photograph of a smiling family in black and white. The corners smelled faintly of mold and rain, but beneath all that decay, something felt. Alive, Bianca paused, listening. There it was again, a faint sound. She tilted her head. It wasn't the wind. It was softer, a whimper. She moved toward the back of the cabin, where the wall had partially collapsed. Her boots squelched in the mud, seeping through the gaps. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling despite herself. "Is someone there?" No answer. Then another sound, shifting, quick. She swung her flashlight toward a pile of broken boards and old quilts. Two wide eyes blinked back at her. Bianca froze. The beam of her light revealed a boy, maybe 10 years old, his face smudged with dirt, his blonde hair matted. He flinched when the light hit him, pulling an even smaller figure closer. A little girl, maybe 6, her cheeks hollow, her eyes enormous. "Oh my God," Bianca whispered. The boy didn't move. His arms wrapped protectively around the girl, his body trembling. "Please don't tell," he said hoarsely. Bianca crouched slowly, lowering the flashlight so it wasn't shining in their faces. "I won't tell anyone," she said softly. "It's okay." "I didn't mean to scare you." The girl buried her face in the boy's shoulder. Bianca's heart hammered. They looked exhausted, half-starved. She could see the outlines of their ribs through the torn clothes. Her mind raced. How long had they been here? How had no one known? "What's your name?" Bianca asked gently. The boy hesitated. "Eli?" he finally said. "This is my sister, Mara." "Hi, Eli. Hi, Mara." She offered a small smile. "I'm Bianca. I just bought this place." "I didn't know anyone was here." Eli's eyes darted toward the door. "We're not supposed to talk to strangers." "That's smart," Bianca said. "Your parents must have taught you that." The boy's mouth twitched, and the little girl began to cry softly. Bianca's stomach twisted. "Are your parents nearby?" He shook his head. "They went away. A long time ago." Rain drummed harder on the roof. A gust of wind rattled the window pane, and the girl whimpered. Instinct overrode hesitation. Bianca slipped off her jacket and draped it over them. "You're freezing." The boy didn't resist this time. His fingers brushed hers, ice cold. "Let me get you both warm," she said. "My truck's just outside." "I have blankets and food," but Eli shook his head violently. "We can't leave. If we go out, he'll find us." "Who?" He looked down. The man who comes at night, Bianca's breath caught. What man? The one who says this is his cabin. Thunder cracked overhead, startling them all. Bianca stood up, heart pounding. "Oh, you're safe now," she said firmly, even though she wasn't sure it was true. "Nobody's going to hurt you while I'm here." The boy's eyes flicked toward the window again, as if expecting to see a figure lurking in the storm. She swallowed hard. "I'm going to get my flashlight and bring in the blankets. Don't move, okay?" They didn't answer. Bianca hurried outside. The air was colder now, thick with mist. She grabbed 2 blankets from the truck and a half-empty thermos of cocoa. As she turned back toward the cabin, her flashlight beam skimmed across the tree line. Something shifted there. A shadow or her imagination? She froze. The beam caught the edge of a boot print in the mud. Fresh, Bianca's pulse quickened. Someone had been here recently. She backed toward the cabin, scanning the woods. The silence was unnerving, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. She forced herself to move. When she stepped back inside, Eli was standing now, clutching a cracked baseball bat that must have belonged to the previous owner. His eyes were wide, terrified. "He's out there," the boy whispered. Bianca shut the door and slid the broken latch into place. "Not tonight, he's not," she said, voice trembling but determined. Outside, the wind howled through the trees again, like something alive, angry and ancient. Inside, the ruined cabin no longer felt abandoned. It felt like the start of something, dangerous, unexpected, and utterly life-changing. And as Bianca stood there with 2 terrified children and a storm raging outside, she realized one thing with bone-deep certainty. Her $10 purchase was about to cost her far more than she could have ever imagined. The storm battered the cabin all night. Rain lashed the roof in relentless waves, and the wind howled through the gaps in the walls like some wild spirit that refused to be silenced. Bianca sat near the cold fireplace, the dim light of her lantern flickering over the children's faces. Eli and Mara had finally fallen asleep, curled together under her blankets. Their breaths came shallow and uneven, the kind of sleep born from exhaustion, not peace. Bianca wrapped her arms around her knees, staring into the unlit hearth. Her mind raced. Who were these children really? How long had they been living here? And what did Eli mean about the man who comes at night? Outside, a branch snapped. She jerked her head toward the window. The sound was too deliberate, too close. Her heart began to thud painfully. She reached for the old rifle propped in the corner, a relic she'd found earlier by the fireplace. The barrel was rusted, probably useless, but the weight in her hands gave her a small sense of control. Bianca crept toward the window and peered out. The rain had slowed, and the moon broke through a torn veil of clouds. The forest shimmered with wet silver light. Then she saw it, movement among the trees, a figure tall, still, watching. Bianca's stomach twisted. Her breath fogged the window pane. She blinked, but the figure remained, unmoving, half-shrouded in the mist. She whispered to herself, "You're just tired." Seeing things, but when she turned back to the children, Eli's eyes were open. He'd been watching her silently. "He's there, isn't he?" he said softly. Bianca's throat went dry. "Who, Eli?" "The man." She forced a calm she didn't feel. "You've seen him before." The boy nodded, his face pale in the lantern light. "He comes when it rains. He says this cabin belongs to him. He told us if we left, he'd find us." Mara stirred and whimpered in her sleep. Bianca crouched beside Eli. "How long have you been hiding here?" He hesitated. "Since the fire." "The fire?" Eli swallowed. "Our house burned down last winter. Mom and Dad didn't make it." His voice cracked on the last words. "We ran. We didn't know where else to go. The cabin was empty then. We thought it was safe." Bianca's heart clenched. She reached out but stopped herself, not wanting to frighten him further. "You're safe now? I promise." But the way Eli looked toward the window told her he didn't believe that, and neither did she. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the valley wrapped in mist. Bianca stepped outside to fetch water from the creek, her nerves still raw from the night before. Every sound made her flinch, the croak of a raven, the crackle of melting frost underfoot. The forest smelled of wet earth and smoke. She froze when she saw a set of boot prints leading away from the cabin. They weren't hers. Bianca crouched and touched the edge of one. Fresh, deep. Whoever had been out there last night had been close, too close. She followed the prints a few yards into the trees before stopping at a tree trunk. There, carved into the bark, was a crude warning, "Leave now." Her pulse roared in her ears. She backed away slowly, eyes scanning the shadows between trees. By the time she returned to the cabin, her hands were shaking. Eli was awake, sitting by the fire pit where she'd managed to coax a few coals back to life. Mara was beside him, clutching a tin cup of warm cocoa Bianca had made. "You went outside," Eli said, his voice tight. Bianca nodded. "I had to get water, and I saw footprints." Eli's eyes widened. "He's back." Bianca set down the kettle with a soft clang. "Do you know who he is?" Eli bit his lip. "He used to come here before we did. He says it's his land. Sometimes he brings food and tells us stories. But then he started getting angry when we didn't want to go with him." Bianca's stomach twisted. "Go with him where?" Eli just shook his head, staring into the small fire. Bianca exhaled slowly, trying to think. The nearest town, Echo Ridge, was at least 15 miles down winding dirt roads. She hadn't even checked if her truck would make it back. The road had turned to mud during the storm. But she couldn't stay here with the children if someone dangerous was lurking nearby. "I'm going to take you both to town," she said finally. "We'll get help. Maybe someone there knows who you are." Eli's reaction was immediate. "No, we can't go." "Eli, he'll find us if we leave the mountain." "He always finds us." Bianca crouched in front of him. "Listen to me. Whoever this man is, he doesn't get to scare you anymore. You hear me? You're not alone now." Tears welled in the boy's eyes, but he didn't answer. By midday, the fog had lifted enough for Bianca to see the valley below. She decided to test her truck. She told the children to pack what they had: a few blankets, a cracked photo frame, and a stuffed rabbit missing an ear. When she turned the key, the engine sputtered, coughed, then died twice. The battery was weak. "Come on," she muttered, trying again. The third time it roared to life. Relief surged through her until she saw movement in her rearview mirror. A man was standing at the edge of the trees. She froze. He wore a long coat and a hat pulled low over his face. Mud streaked his boots, and one hand rested on what looked like a rifle slung across his shoulder. He didn't move, just stared at her truck. Bianca's breath hitched. "Eli," she whispered, "lock the door." But before the boy could move, the man raised a hand, not in greeting but in warning, and pointed toward the cabin. Then, without a word, he turned and disappeared back into the trees. The forest swallowed him whole. Bianca sat frozen for a long time, the truck idling beneath her. Mara started to cry softly, the sound small and frightened. Eli looked at Bianca, voice shaking. "I told you, he's real." Bianca shut off the engine. "We're not staying here tonight," she said quietly. "We'll figure something out." But as the sun sank behind the peaks and the shadows lengthened across the clearing, Bianca realized something she hadn't before. The man in the woods wasn't just trying to scare them away. He was protecting something, and whatever it was, it had been buried in that cabin long before she arrived. The next morning dawned clear and brittle, the air sharp as glass. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean but eerily still. Bianca stood outside the cabin, coffee steaming in her hands, her eyes fixed on the line of trees where the stranger had stood the night before. The woods looked empty now, innocent, even, but she didn't believe it for a second. Inside, Eli and Mara were quiet. Too quiet. The boy sat at the table she'd cobbled together from old boards, methodically turning over a tin soldier in his fingers. The girl colored shapes in the dust on the floor with a stick of charcoal she'd found. They were trying to pretend things were normal. Bianca admired that. After a while, Eli asked, "Are we leaving today?" Bianca exhaled slowly. "Not yet. The road's still mud, and I need to make sure the truck will actually make it. We'll go soon, I promise." He didn't look convinced. "He doesn't like it when people take things from here." "Eli," she said gently, crouching beside him. "Who is he?" The boy's fingers tightened around the tin soldier. His name's Mr. Dylan. He used to come here before the fire. He said this land was his father's, but when we told him we were staying, he said bad things happen to people who don't listen." Bianca's blood chilled. "Has he hurt you?" Eli shook his head quickly. "No, but he comes at night and watches. Sometimes we hear him digging." "Digging?" Eli looked at her then, eyes wide and solemn. Under the floor, Bianca's heart gave a hard, cold thump. "You mean here?" "In this cabin," he nodded. "Sometimes, when we were hiding, we could hear him moving around below us. We tried to look once, but the boards were nailed shut." Bianca glanced toward the floor. The boards were old, warped, but she hadn't noticed anything unusual, except for the hollow echo when she'd walked across one section near the hearth. She swallowed. "Show me." Eli hesitated, then got up and led her to the corner near the old stone fireplace. Mara followed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Eli pointed to a plank just slightly darker than the rest, its nails newer and shinier. Bianca knelt down. The grain of the wood looked wrong, like it had been replaced recently. She tapped it. "Hollow. Do you have a hammer?" she asked. Eli ran to fetch her one from the truck's toolbox. She wedged it under the board and pried upward. The nail squealed, bending free. Just puffed up in a thin grey cloud, another board came loose, then another, and then she saw it, an opening about 3 feet wide leading into darkness. A faint draught rose from below, cold and damp. Mara clung tighter to Eli. Bianca aimed her flashlight down. The beam illuminated a dirt tunnel, rough walls hand-dug. It descended at a steep angle, vanishing into blackness. Her pulse spiked. "What in the world?" "Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." "Now back to the story," Eli whispered. "That's where he goes." Bianca hesitated, the old instincts of a photojournalist sparking inside her. Curiosity and caution battled for dominance. She turned to the children. "Stay right here. Don't move, no matter what you hear." Eli grabbed her sleeve. "Don't go down there, please. I'll be careful. I just need to know what's going on." She slipped her flashlight into her jacket pocket, grabbed her phone for light, and climbed into the hole. The air grew colder as she descended, carrying a strange metallic scent, like rust and damp earth. Her boots slid against the packed soil. 10 feet down, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Her light fell on wooden beams, supporting the low ceiling, and a few rusted tools scattered on the ground. Then she froze. There were old crates stacked against the far wall, covered in burlap. Bianca's breath came shallow as she approached one. The wood was soft with age, the markings faded. She brushed away dirt and read what was left of the stenciled words, U.S. Army Supply, 1944. Her stomach flipped. What would World War II supply crates be doing under a cabin in the mountains? She pried one open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were metal cylinders, sealed, stamped with serial numbers she didn't recognize. Not bullets, not tools, something else. She pulled the phone closer to read. The light reflected off a faded warning label. Caution, chemical storage, handle with care. Bianca's skin went cold. She backed away, heart pounding. What had she just uncovered? A faint sound broke her thoughts. A shuffle behind her. She spun around, flashlight sweeping across the walls. "Hello?" No answer, but then she saw it. Fresh boot prints in the dirt. Someone had been down here recently. Bianca's flashlight flickered. She cursed softly and hit the side of it. When the beam steadied, it caught movement at the mouth of the tunnel, a shadow shifting. "Eli," she called. "Is that you?" No reply. Her instincts screamed run. She scrambled back toward the ladder of makeshift boards she'd used to climb down. Halfway up, a hand suddenly gripped the edge above her, rough, strong, adult. Her flashlight slipped from her grasp and clattered to the ground below, plunging the tunnel into darkness. "Who's there?" she gasped. A low voice answered, cold and close. "You shouldn't have come down here." Bianca's blood iced over. She tried to climb faster, but the man's hand reached down, grabbing her wrist. She kicked out hard, connecting with something solid. He cursed, loosening his grip. She scrambled the rest of the way up and threw herself through the hole in the floor, landing hard on her knees. Eli and Mara screamed, "Go!" "Outside!" she shouted. They ran for the door as she slammed the floorboard back down, grabbing a heavy crate to cover it. A moment later, something hit the underside from below, once, twice, making the board jump. Then silence. Bianca's chest heaved. She grabbed the children and half dragged them outside into the sunlight. The forest looked the same as always, quiet, beautiful, deceitful. Eli clutched her arm. "He was down there, wasn't he?" Bianca couldn't speak. She just nodded. They ran for the truck. She turned the key. It roared to life this time, thank God, and she threw it into gear. Gravel flew from under the tires as she tore down the narrow road, but as they rounded the bend, she glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the cabin one last time. A man stood in the doorway, watching them go. His coat flapped in the wind, his face shadowed by his hat, and when the sun caught the edge of his hand, she saw it, dirt-stained, clutching something that gleamed metallic, one of the sealed cylinders from the tunnel. The road to Echo Ridge twisted down the mountain in endless switchbacks. Bianca's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she drove, every jolt of the tires making her heart jump. In the passenger seat, Eli stared out the window, his expression blank, while Mara slept with her head in his lap, clutching her battered rabbit. They hadn't spoken much since fleeing the cabin. Bianca's thoughts were tangled, the tunnel, the strange crates, the man's voice echoing in the dark. You shouldn't have come down here. Every instinct screamed that the children were in danger, and that danger was now following them. When they finally reached the valley, the dirt road widened and merged with a paved one. The first signs of town appeared, a faded "Welcome to Echo Ridge," population 512 sign, a tiny gas station, a post office, and a general store with a sagging porch and hand-painted lettering. Bianca pulled over in front of the store. The truck's engine coughed, then died, as if in protest. "Stay close," she told the children. "We'll get something to eat and figure out what to do next." The bell above the door jingled as they stepped inside. The air smelled of coffee, pine soap, and something comforting: normalcy. Behind the counter stood a grey-haired man in a flannel shirt and suspenders, reading a local newspaper. He looked up as they entered. "Morning," he said, his voice low and slow, like gravel shifting in a riverbed. "Haven't seen you before." Bianca forced a smile. "Just passing through. My name's Bianca. These are Eli and Mara." He nodded, his eyes flicking over the children with concern. "You folks look like you've been through a storm." "You could say that." She picked up a few bottles of water, some canned soup, and a pack of batteries. As she approached the counter, she noticed something odd. A photograph pinned to the wall behind him. It was of a family standing in front of a log cabin. The woman's smile was faint but kind. 2 children, a boy and a girl, stood beside her. Bianca froze. The children in the picture were Eli and Mara. Her voice caught. "Where did you get that photo?" The storekeeper turned, frowning. "That one? Sheriff brought it in months ago. Said some travelers went missing up the ridge last winter. Parents never found. Been asking around, but no one's seen the kids since." Bianca felt the ground tilt beneath her. "They survived," she said quietly. "They were in the cabin." The man's brows knit together. "The old Dalen cabin?" She nodded slowly. His face darkened. "That place should have been burned to the ground years ago." Bianca leaned forward. "Why, what happened there?" He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the kids. "Not here." "Too many years?" He gestured toward the back of the store. "Come on!" She followed him through a doorway into a small office filled with ledgers, boxes, and the faint hum of an old refrigerator. The man shut the door behind them. "My name's Hank Rourke," he said, lowering his voice. "My daddy worked up in those hills during the war. That cabin wasn't just a home. It was part of a military storage route, hidden depots for things the government didn't want found." Bianca's heart began to pound. "Chemical canisters?" He looked sharply at her. "You found them, didn't you?" She nodded. "There's a tunnel under the cabin, full of them." Rourke swore under his breath. "Then you're in trouble, lady. That stuff was never supposed to see daylight again. Why?" He opened a drawer and pulled out an old file, edges yellowed with age. "Because those crates came from a site called Project Nightfall. Experimental chemical compounds. Rumor was The army buried the leftovers up here after an accident. The Dalen family took over the property afterward and swore no one would dig. Most folks forgot, but not the Dalens. Bianca's chest tightened. There's a man, Mr. Dalen, Eli said. He's still there. He tried to keep us from finding the tunnel. Rourke's expression turned grim. Then he's not protecting that cabin. He's guarding it, she frowned. Guarding it from who? He looked her dead in the eye. From anyone who knows what's buried under it. And now that you've seen it, that includes you. A chill crept up her spine. I need to tell the sheriff. Rourke shook his head. Sheriff's no help. Dalen owns half the mountain, has friends in the county office. You bring the law into this, and it's your word against his. Bianca pressed a hand to her forehead. So what am I supposed to do? I can't take these kids back there. Don't, he said. There's a church a few miles north, Father Reynolds. Good man, he'll hide them for a bit. Bianca nodded slowly. What about me? Rourke hesitated. You might want to leave the mountain. Tonight. They left the store an hour later with food, blankets, and a hand-drawn map to the church. Eli was quiet, but Bianca could see the tension in his shoulders. He was listening, always listening, as though expecting footsteps behind him. As they walked back to the truck, Mara tugged on Bianca's sleeve. Miss Bianca, she whispered. He's here. Bianca's blood went cold. Who? Mara pointed across the street. A man stood beside a parked black truck, leaning against it casually, as if he'd been there all day. His coat was the same, long, dark, mud-stained. His hat shaded his face, but she didn't need to see his eyes to know Mr. Dalen. He tipped his head slightly in her direction, a gesture not of greeting, but warning, and then climbed into his truck and drove off toward the ridge. Eli's voice was barely audible. He followed us! Bianca's throat tightened. Get in the truck, she said. As they sped away, dust curling behind the tires, she saw Rourke run out of the store, shouting something she couldn't hear, something lost in the roar of the wind. But as she glanced at the passenger seat, she realized Eli was holding something new, a small envelope he'd quietly taken from the counter before they left. She frowned. Eli, what's that? He looked nervous. It was with our picture. It says for sheriff only. Bianca stared at it, the paper yellowed and sealed with wax. On the front, written in old fading ink, were 5 words that made her skin prickle. The road to the church wound through dense forest and over crumbling bridges. Mist clung to the treetops, and every shadow seemed alive. Bianca kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting the black truck to appear again. It didn't, but that didn't make her feel safer. Mara slept in the back seat, her small hands curled around her rabbit. Eli sat upright, the sealed envelope clutched to his chest as though it might vanish if he let go. What's in it? Bianca asked gently. Eli's eyes stayed on the window. I don't know. But Mom and Dad used to talk about the night the sky turned green. They said it happened before the fire. Bianca frowned. Green, he nodded, like the northern lights. But they said it came from the mountain. Bianca's pulse quickened. Maybe this envelope explains it. When they reached the church, a white steeple rose out of the fog like a ghostly finger pointing skyward. The building looked old but sturdy, its stained glass windows glimmering faintly in the morning light. Father Reynolds met them at the door, tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and hands rough from years of work. Rourke had called ahead. You must be Bianca, he said, ushering them in. And these are the children? She nodded. They need a safe place to stay. There's a man after them. He didn't flinch. You're not the first to come here scared of someone from that ridge. That sentence hit her like a hammer. As they settled inside, the church bell tolled faintly in the distance. The pews were empty except for a few stray hymnals. A wood stove crackled in the corner, giving off a comforting warmth. Eli sat beside Mara on a bench while Bianca handed Father Reynolds the envelope. It was in the general store. I think it's connected to whatever's hidden under that cabin. He studied the seal. Wax old style. Definitely government. Are you sure you want to open it? Bianca met his eyes. If it helps us understand what's happening. Yes. He nodded and carefully peeled back the wax, removing a folded set of documents. The pages were yellowed and fragile. Across the top, stamped in black ink, were the words, Project Nightfall. Confidential field report date, October 3rd, 1944. Location, Echo Ridge Testing Grounds. Father Reynolds read aloud. Test site Echo Ridge, designated for secondary containment of recovered chemical agents from Base 27. Local miners contracted under false pretenses for tunnel excavation. Following breach event on 09/28/44, 2 workers missing, 1 dead. Exposure levels remain unknown. Area sealed under command of Major Henry Dalen. Bianca's blood ran cold. Dalen, same last name. The priest nodded grimly. Probably the grandfather of the man who's been stalking you. He continued reading. Residents in nearby settlement report strange, luminous phenomena in night sky. Animals found deceased along creek bed with tissue corrosion. Command recommends immediate destruction of site. Local authority refuses, citing property rights. Bianca pressed her hands to her face. So they buried the chemicals under the cabin and left them there for 80 years. Father Reynolds set the papers down. If that's true, those containers could be leaking. The soil, the water, this whole mountain could be contaminated. Eli looked up sharply. That's why Mom got sick. Bianca turned toward him. What do you mean? He swallowed. Before the fire, she started coughing a lot. Said the air burned her throat. Dad went down into the cellar one night. When he came back, his hands were shaking. He told me never to dig there again. Bianca's heart clenched. And then the fire? Eli nodded slowly. He said he was going to tell someone in town. That night, our house caught fire. He said it was an accident, but he trailed off. Bianca met the priest's eyes. It wasn't an accident. Before Father Reynolds could respond, a loud thud echoed from outside. He went to the window. It's just the wind, he began, then stopped. Bianca joined him. A black truck was parked by the gate. Mara whimpered. It's him. Father Reynolds drew himself up, shoulders squared. Stay here. He stepped outside, coat whipping in the wind. Bianca watched as he approached the vehicle. The driver's window rolled down. She couldn't see the man's face, but she could feel the tension from inside the church. The conversation was short. The priest gestured firmly toward the road, his voice raised. The man didn't move. Then slowly, the truck backed away and disappeared into the trees. When Father Reynolds returned, his jaw was tight. He knows you're here, he said quietly. He told me the mountain belongs to his family, that you're trespassing on military property. Bianca felt a surge of anger. That land was listed for sale. I bought it legally. He shook his head. Legal or not, he won't stop. You uncovered something he's sworn to protect, and he's convinced those children are part of it. Bianca's eyes narrowed. What does he want with them? The priest hesitated. He didn't say. But he called them the last heirs. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli looked confused. Heirs to what? Father Reynolds looked at Bianca. Whatever your cabin sits on, the Dalen family believes those two have a right to it. Maybe their parents were involved in uncovering the truth. Bianca's thoughts raced. If he wants them, it means they're connected to the original project somehow. The priest nodded. And that means he won't rest until he gets them back. Bianca stood, determination hardening her voice. Then we have to find proof, enough to expose what really happened up there. Father Reynolds looked uneasy. That could be dangerous. It already is, Bianca said. And if we don't act, those kids will never be safe. The priest's gaze softened. Then you'll need help, and I think I know someone who can provide it. Who? He crossed to a small cabinet and pulled out a faded photograph. A young woman in military uniform, her eyes fierce, standing beside an aircraft. Her name's Clara Dalen, Henry Dalen's granddaughter. She turned against the family years ago. Lives on the far side of the ridge. If anyone knows what really happened, it's her. Bianca took the photo, feeling the weight of the moment. Then that's where we're going next. Father Reynolds nodded. I'll keep the children safe until you return. Bianca turned toward Eli and Mara, kneeling to meet their eyes. I'll come back for you. I promise, Mara sniffled. Promise? Bianca smiled softly. Cross my heart. As she stepped outside, the mist had thickened again, curling like breath around the churchyard. She climbed into the truck and started the engine, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. Somewhere beyond that fog was Clara Dayland and he. Maybe the truth that had poisoned Echo Ridge. For 80 years, Bianca took a deep breath and pressed the accelerator. The mountains swallowing her whole once more. The drive up the ridge was brutal. The road narrowed to a single lane, carved into the cliffside, winding through patches of pine and exposed rock. Clouds hung low, and rain had begun to fall, washing the dust into rivulets that streaked down the windshield. Bianca's truck groaned as it climbed higher. She hadn't told Father Reynolds. Exactly when she'd return, she couldn't. Make promises she wasn't sure she could keep. All she knew was that Clara Dayland might be the key to everything. The turnoff appeared almost by accident. A rusted metal gate half hidden by overgrown brush. A hand-painted sign warned, "No trespassing, private property." The name Dayland was faintly visible beneath layers of rust and paint. Bianca hesitated, then opened the gate. Beyond it, the land leveled out into a plateau overlooking the valley. A weathered A-frame cabin stood near the edge, surrounded by wild roses and old mining equipment. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. Bianca parked and stepped out, boots sinking into the damp earth. Before she could knock, the door swung open. A woman stood framed in the doorway, mid-50s, wiry with streaks of silver in her dark hair. Her eyes were sharp, unflinching, the same cold grey as the mountains behind her. "You're trespassing," she said flatly. "I know," Bianca replied, "but I think we need to talk." "My name's Bianca Smith." The woman studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're the one who bought the cabin." "Yes, for $10. That earned the faintest twitch of a smile. "Then I suppose you've already seen what's under it." Bianca blinked. "You know about that?" Clara nodded once. "Come in. The wind carries too much out here." Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and smoke. Shelves were lined with maps, old photographs, and a wall full of newspaper clippings. On one table lay a half-assembled radio transceiver, its wires snaking across the surface like veins. Clara poured coffee into 2 tin mugs. "So, you found the children." Bianca froze. "You know about them too?" Clara sat across from her, eyes steady. "Of course I do. Their parents were my friends, scientists. They were trying to prove what my grandfather did up there." Bianca leaned forward. "Henry Dayland, he led Project Nightfall." Clara nodded. "That's the name they gave it. But it wasn't a military experiment the way people think. It started as an attempt to develop a new kind of containment compound, a material that could neutralize radiation. They used this mountain for trials because it was remote." She sipped her coffee, then continued quietly. "But when they realized the compound had side effects, mutations, energy emissions they couldn't explain, they buried it. My grandfather ordered the whole valley sealed. Anyone who tried to talk vanished." Bianca's hands tightened around her mug. "And now the chemicals are leaking." Clara's jaw tightened. "Not chemicals. Something else. The miners described it as living fire. It burned through stone. They said it whispered when you got close." Bianca shuddered. "And the Darlan family kept it secret for 80 years. They tried to. But some things can't stay buried forever." Bianca glanced toward a framed photograph on the shelf, a young couple with 2 children, smiling beside Clara. "That's Eli and Mara's parents." Clara followed her gaze, her expression softening. "Jonas and Lila, they were good people. Jonas was a geochemist, Lila a teacher. They came here hoping to clean up what was left of Project Nightfall. Instead, they found proof it was still active." "Active?" Bianca echoed. Clara nodded. "There's a containment vault beneath your cabin. It was supposed to hold the last of the compound. Jonas found a way to open part of it, and that's when things started happening." Bianca felt a chill crawl up her spine. "The fire?" Clara's eyes darkened. Yes, he must have triggered the failsafe. The explosion that destroyed their home wasn't natural. It was the compound trying to protect itself. Bianca took a shaky breath. "So those kids, they're the only ones left who know where their parents stored the data." "Exactly." Clara stood and crossed to a filing cabinet, retrieving a manila folder. She laid it on the table and opened it. Inside were photographs, aerial shots of the mountain, maps of tunnels, and one grainy image of a circular chamber glowing faintly from within. "This is the vault," she said. "My grandfather built it himself. He believed what they found was divine, a gift from the heavens. But the truth is, it's killing the mountain." Bianca stared at the photo. "What happens if it leaks?" Clara met her eyes. "It already is." Silence fell between them, broken only by the wind rattling the windows. Finally, Bianca said, "I need to get those kids somewhere safe. Dalen's men are still after them." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "He won't stop. The Dalen family has been guarding that vault for generations. If you threaten to expose them, he'll do whatever it takes." "I'm not backing down," Bianca said firmly. "I didn't come here to die, but I won't let him hurt those kids." For a moment, Clara studied her, then nodded approvingly. "You remind me of Lila, brave and stubborn." She turned back to the maps. "There's another entrance to the vault, through an old mine shaft north of your cabin. If we can reach it before he does, we might be able to find the records Jonas hid there." Bianca nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do." Clara handed her a flashlight and a folded map. "Be careful. The mountain shifts when the air changes, and sometimes it feels like it's breathing." Bianca forced a smile. Comforting thought. As she turned to leave, Clara stopped her. "One more thing. If you hear a low hum, like a heartbeat in the earth, don't follow it. That's the core. It feeds on energy, on life. It's not meant for us." Bianca froze. "Feeds?" Clara's eyes met hers, deadly serious. "That's why it's called nightfall. Because once it wakes, daylight doesn't come back." Bianca's breath caught. She nodded once, pocketed the map, and stepped outside into the mist. The rain had stopped, but thunder still echoed through the mountains. As she started the truck, she glanced back toward Clara's cabin. The woman stood at the window, watching her leave, a silhouette framed by flickering firelight. Bianca gripped the wheel. Somewhere beneath her cabin, beneath the roots and stones and graves of Echo Ridge, something was alive, and it was waiting. She pressed the accelerator. Tomorrow she'd go back. Tomorrow she'd open the mountain. The mountain felt different when Bianca returned. The air was heavier, charged, as though something deep underground had stirred while she was gone. The sky above Echo Ridge was bruised purple, with streaks of lightning crawling across the horizon like veins. Bianca parked beside the cabin, her headlights sweeping over the collapsed walls and piles of warped boards. It no longer looked like a home. It looked like a wound in the earth. She shut off the engine and stepped out, flashlight in hand. The silence was eerie. Even the birds had stopped singing. A rustle came from the tree line. Clara emerged from the shadows, carrying a canvas bag and a coiled rope. "You made it," she said. "Good. The weather's about to turn ugly." "I noticed," Bianca replied, glancing toward the gathering storm. Clara motioned for her to follow. "The mine entrance is under the old root cellar. It's been sealed for decades, but there's a secondary shaft that might still be stable." Bianca followed her to the back of the property, where the earth sloped downward into what used to be a garden. The remains of a wooden door jutted out from the dirt. Clara knelt, brushing away debris to reveal a rusted latch. "Help me with this," she said. Together they pried the door open. The hinges screamed in protest. A cold rush of air spilled out, smelling of stone and something faintly metallic, and something else faintly sweet like burnt sugar. Bianca wrinkled her nose. "What is that smell?" Clara didn't answer right away. She took out a lantern, lighting the wick. "It's the air from below. Don't breathe too deeply." They descended the ladder carefully, one rung at a time. The wood was slick with condensation, but somehow still strong. At the bottom, Bianca's boots touched packed earth. Her flashlight beam swept across the narrow passage. Old mining supports, damp rock walls, and a thin trickle of water running down the center. The air pulsed faintly. "Not from sound, but from vibration. Do you feel that?" Bianca whispered. Clara nodded. "It's stronger than before. The containment must be weakening." They moved slowly through the tunnel. The deeper they went, the more the walls began to glow faintly. veins of light threading through the stone like living roots. It wasn't electric light. It shimmered, dimmed and pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. Bianca stopped. "It's alive." Clara's voice was low. "It's reacting to us, to body heat, maybe even thought." They reached a fork in the tunnel, one path blocked by a cave-in, the other descending sharply. Clara pointed down. "That's the access shaft to the vault. Jonas came through here once before the fire." Bianca followed. Her flashlight flickered, the beam cutting through dust and shadow. Then the tunnel widened into a chamber. At the center of the chamber stood a metal door, circular and ancient, half buried in rock. Symbols had been etched around its rim, military insignias, serial numbers, and beneath them something else, carvings that didn't look human. Bianca ran her fingers along the symbols. "These aren't from any alphabet I've seen." Clara crouched beside her, tracing the edge of the circle. Jonas said the compound started to change the structure of metal around it. It reshaped things. He thought it was communicating. Bianca frowned. Communicating with who? Before Clara could answer, a faint clicking echoed through the tunnel. Footsteps. Bianca's heart leapt. She turned off her light, pressing her back to the wall. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable rasp of metal, a rifle being cocked. Clara's face hardened. "He's here." Mr. Dalen's voice carried through the darkness. "You shouldn't have come back, Miss Smith. That vault doesn't belong to you." Bianca's pulse pounded. "It doesn't belong to anyone," she shot back. "Your family poisoned this mountain." He laughed, low and humorless. "Poisoned? No, preserved. That energy down there, it's not death. It's the future. My grandfather knew that." Clara stepped into the faint light of her lantern. "You mean the thing that killed half your workers?" "That future?" Dalen aimed the flashlight toward her. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow from years of obsession. "Clara, you should have stayed buried with the rest of them." Bianca moved subtly, circling toward the vault. "What do you want, Dalen?" "The children," he said simply. "They have what belongs to us." Jonas and Lila recorded everything in their daughter's pendant, genetic access code for the vault. "Without it, we can't open it." Bianca froze. "Mara's necklace." He smiled faintly. "You've seen it then. Good. Hand it over and I'll let you live." Clara's eyes flashed. "You'd destroy everything trying to reach it." "I'd finish what my grandfather started." As he stepped forward, the ground beneath them rumbled. A deep, low growl from within the mountain. Dust fell from the ceiling. The glowing veins in the rock brightened. Dalen looked around, confused. "What's happening?" Clara grabbed Bianca's arm. "It's reacting to him, to his anger, his intent." The glow intensified until the air itself shimmered. Bianca felt warmth spreading through her skin, not burning but invasive, like something was reaching inside her mind. "Clara!" she shouted. "We have to go." But Clara didn't move. She stared at the vault, eyes wide. It's opening. The metal door was shifting, its surface warping like liquid mercury. Symbols rearranged themselves, forming a spiral. A seam split down the center and light spilled out, blinding white, pulsing like the heartbeat of the earth. Dalen raised an arm to shield his face, yelling over the roar. "Do you see? It's alive! It wants us!" Bianca grabbed Clara, pulling her back. "Run!" The vault exhaled, a blast of hot wind that knocked them both off their feet. The tunnel filled with sound, not mechanical but vocal. A low, harmonic hum that vibrated through bone and blood. Then, silence. When Bianca opened her eyes, the light was gone. The vault door stood ajar, a gap wide enough for a person to slip through. Clara coughed, wiping blood from her lip. "It's unlocked." Dalen lay motionless near the wall, his flashlight flickering beside him. Bianca stood shakily, staring at the open doorway. A faint glow pulsed from within, rhythmic and steady. "What's in there?" she whispered. Clara looked at her. "The truth." Bianca's pulse thudded in her ears. "Then let's finish this." Together, they stepped toward the light. The light from the vault was unlike any light Bianca had ever seen. It wasn't blinding exactly. It moved like water, bending around them, breathing with the rhythm of something alive. As she and Clara stepped through the half-open door, the air shifted. Warmth pressed against their skin, pulsing with an almost human heartbeat. The chamber was massive, circular, lined with metallic walls that seemed to ripple as they moved. In the center stood a sphere suspended in mid-air, about 10 feet across, spinning slowly. Its surface shimmered with liquid radiance, reflecting fragments of their faces, memories and images that weren't real. Flashes of places Bianca didn't know, people she'd never met. "What is that?" Bianca whispered. Clara's voice trembled. "The core of Project Nightfall. They called it the resonant seed. Jonas believed it wasn't man-made." Bianca tore her gaze away. "Not man-made. You mean—" "Something they found," Clara said quietly. "During the war, the army discovered fragments of unknown origin buried in a meteor crater. They brought some here trying to harness the energy, but the material didn't obey physics. It grew." Bianca's flashlight flickered. "Grew?" Clara nodded. "It's alive, or something close to it. It consumes radiation, heat, even thought. That's why my grandfather sealed it. He thought he could control it, but it started adapting." Bianca's stomach twisted. "And now it's breaking free." A faint hum rose from the sphere, almost melodic. Bianca felt her heartbeat sinking with it. For a moment her fear softened, replaced by something like awe. She took an involuntary step forward. "Bianca," Clara said sharply, "don't go closer." But Bianca couldn't stop. The light was warm, almost comforting, filling her mind with fleeting images. A forest in spring, a river of stars, children laughing. Then she heard a voice, faint but unmistakable. "Help us." She froze. "Clara, did you hear that?" Clara shook her head, eyes wide. "What did it say?" "It sounded like Mara," Bianca whispered. "She's calling for me." Clara's face went pale. "That's not her, Bianca. It reads memory, emotion." "It's trying to draw you in." Bianca stumbled back, breath quickening. The illusion faded and the sphere dimmed, almost as if disappointed. Then, from behind them, came a groan of shifting metal. Bianca whirled around. Mr. Dalen was on his feet, staggering toward the light. His face was grey, his eyes wild with desperation. "You don't understand," he shouted. "This is evolution. My family was chosen to protect it, to become it." "Stop!" Clara yelled. "You'll kill yourself." But Dalen only laughed, a cracked, hysterical sound. "It doesn't kill, it transforms." He reached the sphere and pressed his palm against it. For a second, nothing happened. Then the light flared. A shockwave threw Bianca and Clara to the ground. The hum rose to a deafening pitch as the sphere pulsed violently. Bianca looked up just in time to see Dalen's body arch backward, his veins glowing from within. His scream was cut short as his form dissolved into light, pulled inside the sphere like smoke into a flame. Then, silence. The sphere steadied, its glow softening again. But now the hum was different, steadier, faster, alive. Clara pulled herself to her feet. "He's gone," she whispered. "Absorbed." Bianca stared at the core. "Can it? Is he still alive in there?" "I don't know," Clara said. "But whatever it is, it's stronger now." Bianca's mind raced. "If this thing can feed on people, we have to shut it down, destroy it." Clara shook her head. "You can't destroy what doesn't die. Jonas tried. That's what caused the fire. He overloaded the containment field. It only made it grow." Bianca looked around the chamber, spotting a panel near the far wall. She approached it, brushing away layers of dust and grime. Behind it were old switches, dials, and a faded label. "Emergency. Containment sequence. Manual override." "This might still work," she said. "If we can re-engage the containment field, we can trap it again." Clara hesitated. "Jonas said it required 2 codes, one stored in the main system and one biological." Bianca frowned. "Biological?" Clara looked grim. "The pendant, the one Mara wears." Realization hit Bianca like a stone. "That's why Dalen wanted her." "Yes," Clara said. "She's the failsafe, Bianca's voice hardened. Then we go back. We bring her here, but safely. We end this, Clara. Clara didn't answer. She was staring at the sphere, expression unreadable. Bianca, she said softly, if we fail, this thing won't just consume the mountain. It'll spread. It can move through groundwater, soil, even air. Bianca nodded. Then we don't fail. A low tremor rippled beneath their feet. The sphere pulsed again, faster this time, brighter. Clara grabbed her pack. It's waking up. We have to go now. They sprinted toward the tunnel, the chamber behind them shaking violently. The walls flared with veins of light, the hum rising into a near-human wail. By the time they reached the ladder, the earth was trembling. Bianca climbed first, lungs burning, the sound of the vault echoing below like a creature coming to life. When she finally emerged into the open air, the storm had broken. Rain poured down in torrents, lightning splitting the sky above the cabin. Clara climbed out after her, slamming the cellar doors shut. The ground beneath them heaved once more, then went still. Bianca stared at the mountain. It's alive, she whispered. It's becoming something. Clara nodded grimly. And if we don't stop it, Echo Ridge won't survive the week. Bianca turned toward the truck. Then we need Mara and Eli. They're the key. Clara met her gaze. Then we go to the church, before the mountain does. Lightning lit the sky behind them as they drove away, the faint hum of the vault following them through the storm like a heartbeat that refused to die. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. Thunder rolled across the mountains like distant artillery, and lightning flashed in sheets, illuminating the jagged outline of Echo Ridge. The road to the church had turned into a river of mud and gravel, but Bianca didn't slow down. Her hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the flickering light. Beside her, Clara stared out the window, eyes scanning the tree line. It's spreading, she said quietly. Do you see that? Bianca followed her gaze. Patches of the forest were glowing faintly, the same blue-white shimmer she'd seen inside the vault, threading through roots and tree trunks. It's leaking, Bianca whispered. Clara nodded grimly. The containment's breaking down. The mountain's bleeding into everything. They reached the church just before dawn. The bell tower loomed out of the fog, its cross silhouetted against the storm-grey sky. The doors were closed, but a faint light glowed inside. Bianca jumped out of the truck, her boots splashing through puddles. She ran to the doors and pushed them open. Inside, Father Reynolds stood near the altar, holding a lantern. His face was pale and drawn, dark circles under his eyes. Bianca, he said, voice trembling with relief. Thank God. The children, Mara and Eli, Bianca gasped. Where are they? In the back, he said. But something's wrong. They've been sleepwalking, talking in their sleep. I can't wake them. Bianca and Clara hurried to the small side room. The children lay on 2 cots, blankets pulled up to their chins. Their faces were flushed and faint blue veins pulsed at their temples. Mara's pendant, the little silver one she always wore, was glowing softly. Bianca knelt beside her. Mara, she whispered, touching her shoulder. It's me. The girl stirred but didn't open her eyes. Her lips moved faintly. Bianca leaned closer. It's calling us, Mara whispered. It wants to come home. Clara's breath caught. She's linked to it. Eli stirred next, his voice low and frightened. We saw the lights, Miss Bianca. The mountain was whispering to us. It said we belong down there. Bianca's heart clenched. No, you belong here, with me. Father Reynolds crossed himself. This is beyond anything I've ever seen. Clara examined the pendant. It's resonating with the vault. The signal's growing stronger. It's trying to pull her back. Bianca looked at her. Can we use it to stop the core? Clara hesitated. Maybe. The pendant contains genetic coding from both her parents. They designed it as a key, a biological override. If we take it back to the vault and run the containment sequence, it might reseal the core. Might? Bianca repeated. Clara met her eyes. If the sequence fails, It could trigger another breach. The whole mountain could collapse. Bianca swallowed hard. We don't have a choice. Mara's eyes fluttered open suddenly. The blue glow in her pupils reflected the lantern light. "He's there," she said softly. "The man from the dark." Bianca froze. "Mr. Dalen?" Mara nodded. "He's not gone. He's inside." A chill went through the room. Clara whispered, "Oh God, the core absorbed him. And now he's part of it." Eli sat up suddenly, trembling. "He keeps saying our names. He wants us to come back." Bianca looked to Clara, desperate. "We have to end this tonight." Clara nodded. "I'll prepare the codes, but you'll have to take Mara and the pendant to the core yourself." "What about you?" "I'll stay here and monitor the radio link. If something goes wrong, I'll trigger the failsafe from my end." Bianca shook her head. "I'm not leaving you behind." Clara's expression softened. "Bianca, you're the only one it hasn't tried to control. Whatever's in that mountain can't read you. Maybe because you weren't born here. You have to finish this." Bianca wanted to argue, but she saw the truth in Clara's eyes. Father Reynolds handed her a small wooden crucifix. "Take this. It's not much, but faith sometimes works where science can't." Bianca managed a faint smile. "Thank you, Father." By nightfall, the storm had worsened. The wind howled through the churchyard as Bianca carried Mara to the truck, wrapping her in a blanket. Eli clung to her sleeve, refusing to let go. "I'm coming too," he said firmly. "No," Bianca said. "You stay with Father Reynolds. Keep the radio on." Tears filled his eyes. "But what if you don't come back?" Bianca crouched down, looking him straight in the eye. "I will, because I promised you I would." "And I don't break promises." He nodded shakily and let go. Bianca climbed into the truck, Mara asleep in her lap, the pendant's glow reflecting off the windshield. Clara's voice came over the radio. "Do you copy, Bianca?" "Loud and clear," Bianca said. "Good. Once you reach the vault, find the control panel. Insert the pendant into the port marked biolock. The sequence will start automatically. What happens next?" Clara hesitated. "You'll have 30 seconds to get out before it seals. Don't stop for anything." The truck rattled up the mountain road, headlights cutting through sheets of rain. The forest pulsed with that eerie blue light, spreading from root to branch. It was beautiful and horrifying. As she neared the cabin, Bianca saw movement, shapes in the fog. For a moment, she thought they were people, then realized they weren't. Figures of pure light, flickering like memories, drifting through the trees. Whispers filled the air. "Come home." Bianca tightened her grip on the wheel. "Not tonight." She reached the cabin and carried Mara toward the cellar. The ground was trembling now, steady as a heartbeat. The air shimmered with energy. At the bottom of the ladder, the tunnel glowed faintly, veins of light pulsing in rhythm with Mara's pendant. Clara's voice crackled over the radio. "You're close. Be careful. It's unstable." Bianca descended into the tunnel, heart pounding. The hum grew louder with every step. She could feel the pull in her chest, like gravity itself wanted her to go deeper. Then she saw it. The vault door, still ajar, light spilling from the gap. Mara stirred in her arms, whispering, "He's waiting." Bianca swallowed hard. "Then we'll show him we're not afraid." She stepped inside. The sphere hovered where it had before, spinning slowly, its glow brighter now, almost blinding. Within it, faint human shapes flickered, like ghosts trapped inside glass, and one of them turned toward her. Mr. Dalen's face, twisted, radiant, inhuman, formed in the light. "Oh, you can't stop this," he said, his voice echoing in her mind. "It's beyond you, beyond flesh, beyond death." Bianca met his gaze. "Maybe, but I'm not beyond love, and that's something you'll never understand." She took Mara's pendant, pressed it into the slot on the panel, and hit enter. The chamber erupted in light. The hum became a scream, the walls shaking as the sphere pulsed violently. Bianca grabbed Mara and turned for the tunnel. Clara's voice crackled over the radio. "It's working! The containment's re-engaging. Bianca, get out now." Bianca ran, the heat at her back like fire. The ground buckled, rocks falling around her. She climbed the ladder as the earth roared. shoving Mara through the cellar door just as a burst of light swallowed the tunnel below. They collapsed onto the wet ground outside. The mountain groaned, a sound like thunder from the inside out. Then at last, silence. Rain fell softly, washing away the ash and dust. Bianca looked down at Mara, still in her arms. The girl stirred, blinking sleepily. The glow from her pendant had faded. "It's over," Bianca whispered. "You're safe, but in the distance." Deep beneath the mountain, a faint hum answered. Soft, steady, alive. The first sunrise in weeks broke gently over Echo Ridge. For the first time in as long as Bianca could remember, the light wasn't harsh or broken by fog. It was soft, like it had been waiting for them, for this moment of peace after the storm's endless roar. The cabin was still standing, though barely. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, where Bianca had managed to light a fire hours before. The roof leaked, the porch sagged, but it was a home again, and for the first time, it felt alive in a way that didn't come from any strange glow beneath the ground. Mara and Eli were asleep in the loft, curled under thick quilts. Their breathing was steady. Bianca sat at the old kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee that had gone cold. Her clothes were still damp, boots caked with dried mud, but she didn't care. Her mind kept replaying the light, that final blinding flash when the core sealed itself. She had felt something in that moment, a deep pulse, like the mountain itself exhaled after centuries of holding its breath. Then the silence. Clara's voice came faintly over the radio, static cutting through. "Bianca, do you read me?" Bianca reached for the receiver. "I'm here. We made it out," Clara exhaled audibly. "Thank God. The seismic readings dropped to 0 about 10 minutes ago. The breach sealed itself completely, and the energy signature? Gone. Whatever was left of Dalen or the old experiments, it's all dormant now." "You did it." Bianca leaned back, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. "We did it," she corrected softly. Clara was quiet for a moment. "How are the kids?" "They're sleeping. Peacefully this time." Bianca glanced toward the loft. Mara's pendant stopped glowing. "It's just a charm again." Clara's voice softened. "Then it's really over." Bianca didn't answer right away. She looked out the window toward the mountain, where morning light touched the peak with gold. Birds circled lazily above the tree line. The storm had washed the world clean. "I think so," she said finally. "But part of me feels like the mountain's still watching." Clara hesitated. "Maybe it is. Some things don't die, they just sleep." Bianca managed a tired smile. "Then let's let it sleep." They talked for a few minutes longer, sharing the kind of quiet gratitude only survivors understand. Then Clara signed off to head back to her lab, promising to return once the roads cleared. When the line went silent, Bianca sat for a long time, listening to the creak of the cabin and the soft breathing of the children above. She thought of everything that had happened. The strange vault, the glowing roots, the man who had lost his soul chasing immortality. It felt like something out of a fever dream, and yet the bruises on her arms, the ache in her muscles, were proof enough it had been real. She rose and stepped outside. The ground was wet, the air crisp. A faint mist clung to the grass, and the world smelled of pine and earth and smoke. Beyond the cabin, the forest looked different. The trees stood tall and silent, their bark no longer pulsing with light. The stream that ran past the property sparkled clear and bright, as if relieved to flow freely again. Bianca followed the path down toward the old well, where she'd first found the children. The boards she had used to cover it were still there, though damp and warped. She knelt beside it, running her fingers over the wood. A single wildflower had sprouted through a crack, pale blue, like the glow that had once haunted her nights. She smiled faintly. "Guess some things still want to grow," she whispered. Behind her a small voice said, "Miss Bianca." She turned. Eli was standing barefoot in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You should be resting," she said gently. He shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. I had a dream." "Yeah? What kind of dream?" He walked closer, frowning slightly. "There was a man standing by the mountain. He was looking at me, but he wasn't scary anymore. He said thank you. Bianca felt a chill slide down her spine. Did he say who he was? Eli shook his head. No, but I think he was lonely. Bianca smiled softly, brushing a hand through his hair. Then maybe he's finally found some peace. They stood there together, looking toward the distant peak. The sun climbed higher, the light turning the ridge into a sweep of fire and gold. When Mara woke later, she joined them outside. The pendant still hung around her neck, dull and ordinary now. Can we stay here? She asked suddenly. This place, it feels like home. Bianca's throat tightened. If you want to, yes, but it won't be easy. This place needs work, Mara smiled shyly. You fixed it before. You can do it again, Bianca laughed softly, a sound she hadn't made in months. Yeah, maybe I can. They spent the rest of the morning patching the porch, hauling wood, and feeding the chickens that had somehow survived the storm. The simple rhythm of work grounded them all, 3 souls piecing a life together from ruins. As the day warmed, Bianca found herself looking toward the mountain less often. That night, after tucking the children into bed, she stood outside once more. The stars were out, clear and endless. She thought about her old life in the city, the people she'd left behind, the noise and exhaustion she used to call normal. This, she realized, was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not silence, but meaning. The cabin creaked behind her. A candle flickered in the window where Eli had set it before bed. And for a moment, Bianca saw their reflections, 3 small figures against the vast dark. Standing where life and loss had met and become something new, she whispered into the still air, "Thank you, mountain, for breaking me, so I could begin again." A breeze moved through the trees in answer, soft, almost like a sigh. Bianca smiled and went inside. The mountain stood silent under the stars, its secrets buried once more. But deep beneath its roots, far below the surface, something glowed faintly. Not dangerous this time, but alive. Like a heartbeat, and somewhere in that quiet hum, a whisper lingered, gentle, content. Eternal home. 5 years had passed since the storm, and the night the mountain went silent. The cabin on Echo Ridge looked nothing like it once had. The roof had been repaired and painted green. The porch lined with wildflowers that Mara insisted on tending every spring. A small vegetable garden stretched behind the house. Rows of beans and carrots marked with little wooden signs Eli carved himself. A fresh breeze drifted down from the ridge, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. The land had healed, and so had they. Bianca stood by the fence, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of amber and gold. The air was crisp, her breath visible in the chill. Her hair was longer now, streaked with silver, tied back with a faded red bandana. Her hands were rough from years of work, but her eyes shone with quiet strength. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. "Coffee's ready," Mara called, her voice warm and sure. Bianca turned and smiled. The girl, now 16, was almost as tall as she was, her once frail frame now strong and steady. She wore jeans and an old flannel shirt Bianca had patched a dozen times. Around her neck hung the silver pendant, dull with age but still cherished. "Thanks, sweetheart," Bianca said, taking the steaming mug. "Eli up yet?" Mara grinned. "He's fixing the radio again. He says he can catch the weather channel from town if he climbs onto the roof." Bianca laughed softly. "He's going to break his neck one of these days." As if on cue, a voice shouted from above, "I heard that!" They both looked up. Eli, now 11, peeked over the edge of the roof with a sheepish grin. His hair stuck out in every direction, his cheeks smudged with grease. "I told you not to climb up there without boots." Bianca scolded lightly. "I'm being careful," he protested. "Besides, the signal's stronger today." Mara rolled her eyes. "He says that every day." Bianca sipped her coffee, watching the two of them, and for a moment her heart swelled so full it hurt. These children, who had once come to her frightened and fragile, now filled this home with laughter and noise. They were hers. Later that morning, the 3 of them hiked up the trail to the ridge. It was a ritual they'd kept every spring, a promise to remember where they came from. The forest was alive again, birds singing, squirrels darting through branches, wildflowers bursting through moss. The air hummed softly, like the mountain itself was breathing. When they reached the overlook, Eli pointed toward the valley below. "You can see the whole town from here now." Bianca smiled. "That's because the trees grew back strong." Mara knelt near the edge, brushing her fingers over the ground. "Do you ever wonder if it's still down there?" Bianca hesitated. "The core?" Mara nodded. "The light?" Bianca crouched beside her. "Maybe, but it's not dangerous anymore. Whatever it was, it's part of the mountain now, and the mountain knows how to keep its secrets." Mara glanced at her pendant, turning it between her fingers. "Sometimes I still dream about him. The man in the light. He never speaks anymore. He just smiles." Bianca's expression softened. Maybe that means he found peace." Eli was busy stacking flat stones into a small cairn, their marker. "Each year they added one more. This one's for Dad," he said quietly. Bianca nodded. "And for all the ones who came before us." They stood together in silence, wind brushing their faces, the world vast and golden around them. After a while, Eli tugged Bianca's hand. "Can we go to the creek before lunch?" "Of course," she said, smiling. As they started back down the trail, Mara paused and looked over her shoulder. The sunlight caught the pendant at her throat, and for a brief moment, it shimmered faintly, a soft, natural pulse. Like the heartbeat of the earth, she didn't tell anyone. That night, after dinner, Bianca sat by the fire, reading an old letter from Clara. It came once a year, always in the spring. "Bianca, the mountain's readings remain stable. Whatever energy was buried there, it's resting. Maybe you were right. Maybe it was never meant to be controlled. I hope you and the kids are well. If you ever decide to leave the ridge, there's always a place for you here. But somehow, I think that mountain still needs you more than the world does." Bianca folded the letter and smiled. "I think so too," she murmured. Outside, the wind moved gently through the pines, whispering against the eaves. The sound wasn't eerie anymore. It was like the mountain was singing softly to itself. Mara and Eli were asleep upstairs, their laughter still echoing faintly in the rafters. Bianca leaned back in her chair, gazing at the fire until her eyes grew heavy. Before drifting off, she whispered into the quiet, "We're home now, and if you listened closely, beneath the rustle of the trees, under the sigh of the earth, you might have heard the faintest echo in reply. Warm and ancient as the mountain itself. Yes, home. Up next we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will tee." The mountain stood silent under the stars, its secrets buried once more. But deep beneath its roots, far below the surface, something glowed faintly. Not dangerous this time, but alive. Like a heartbeat, and somewhere in that quiet hum, a whisper lingered, gentle, content. Eternal home. 5 years had passed since the storm, and the night the mountain went silent. The cabin on Echo Ridge looked nothing like it once had. The roof had been repaired and painted green, the porch lined with wildflowers that Mara insisted on tending every spring. A small vegetable garden stretched behind the house. Rows of beans and carrots marked with little wooden signs Eli carved himself. A fresh breeze drifted down from the ridge, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. The land had healed, and so had they. Bianca stood by the fence, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of amber and gold. The air was crisp, her breath visible in the chill. Her hair was longer now, streaked with silver, tied back with a faded red bandana. Her hands were rough from years of work, but her eyes shone with quiet strength. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. "Coffee's ready," Mara called, her voice warm and sure. Bianca turned and smiled. The girl, now 16, was almost as tall as she was, her once frail frame now strong and steady. She wore jeans and an old flannel shirt Bianca had patched a dozen times. Around her neck hung the silver pendant, dull with age but still cherished. "Thanks, sweetheart," Bianca said, taking the steaming mug. "Eli up yet?" Mara grinned. "He's fixing the radio again. He says he can catch the weather channel from town if he climbs onto the roof." Bianca laughed softly. He's going to break his neck one of these days." As if on cue, a voice shouted from above, "I heard that!" They both looked up. Eli, now 11, peeked over the edge of the roof with a sheepish grin. His hair stuck out in every direction, his cheeks smudged with grease. "I told you not to climb up there without boots." Bianca scolded lightly. "I'm being careful," he protested. "Besides, the signal's stronger today." Mara rolled her eyes. "He says that every day." Bianca sipped her coffee, watching the two of them, and for a moment her heart swelled so full it hurt. These children, who had once come to her frightened and fragile, now filled this home with laughter and noise. They were hers. Later that morning, the three of them hiked up the trail to the ridge. It was a ritual they'd kept every spring, a promise to remember where they came from. The forest was alive again, birds singing, squirrels darting through branches, wildflowers bursting through moss. The air hummed softly, like the mountain itself was breathing. When they reached the overlook, Eli pointed toward the valley below. "You can see the whole town from here now." Bianca smiled. "That's because the trees grew back strong." Mara knelt near the edge, brushing her fingers over the ground. "Do you ever wonder if it's still down there?" Bianca hesitated. "The core?" Mara nodded. "The light?" Bianca crouched beside her. "Maybe, but it's not dangerous anymore. Whatever it was, it's part of the mountain now, and the mountain knows how to keep its secrets." Mara glanced at her pendant, turning it between her fingers. "Sometimes I still dream about him. The man in the light. He never speaks anymore. He just smiles." Bianca's expression softened. "Maybe that means he found peace." Eli was busy stacking flat stones into a small cairn, their marker. "Each year they added one more. This one's for Dad," he said quietly. Bianca nodded. "And for all the ones who came before us." They stood together in silence, wind brushing their faces, the world vast and golden around them. After a while, Eli tugged Bianca's hand. "Can we go to the creek before lunch?" "Of course," she said, smiling. As they started back down the trail, Mara paused and looked over her shoulder. The sunlight caught the pendant at her throat, and for a brief moment, it shimmered faintly, a soft, natural pulse. Like the heartbeat of the earth, she didn't tell anyone. That night, after dinner, Bianca sat by the fire, reading an old letter from Clara. It came once a year. "Always in the spring, Bianca. The mountain's readings remain stable. Whatever energy was buried there, it's resting. Maybe you were right. Maybe it was never meant to be controlled. I hope you and the kids are well. If you ever decide to leave the ridge, there's always a place for you here. But somehow, I think that mountain still needs you more than the world does." Bianca folded the letter and smiled. "I think so too," she murmured. Outside, the wind moved gently through the pines, whispering against the eaves. The sound wasn't eerie anymore. It was like the mountain was singing softly to itself. Mara and Eli were asleep upstairs, their laughter still echoing faintly in the rafters. Bianca leaned back in her chair, gazing at the fire until her eyes grew heavy. Before drifting off, she whispered into the quiet, "We're home now, and if you listened closely, beneath the rustle of the trees, under the sigh of the earth, you might have heard the faintest echo in reply. Warm and ancient as the mountain itself. Yes, home." Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.